Ian, who founded Critsex, are with us today and our speakers today. It's wonderful to have them here. The subsequent organisers, me, Robert Gillett and Meg Jong Barker, are also here with us, and we'll be responding to some of the talks we have today. And Elliot, a current organiser, is my co-host and is running this event with us. So I think without further ado, we might kick off with the first panel, which is the activism panel. Our plan today is to have 3 panels and then a session in which respondents respond and we all ask questions. In the individual panels, if you can use the Q&A button, if you can all see that, to ask your questions, and then Elliot or myself will put the questions to the speakers. In the programme, we initially had Del and Susanna Temko to speak in the activism panel. Unfortunately, Susanna has been in touch this morning to say that she's extremely unwell. We hope it's nothing serious, and we wish her well. So this session will be for Del to speak. We asked people to speak for 20 minutes, but Del, if you want to take a bit longer, please do. The plan is that although the sessions are an hour, because Zoom is quite hard to concentrate on, it might make sense if the 2 sessions are, the two papers are 20 minutes, we then take maybe 10 minutes questions and have a nice 10-minute comfort break at the end. For Del's panel, Del has a bit longer to speak, but whenever Del has said what he wants to say and we've had the questions, we'll then take a comfort break and reconvene on the hour. So without further ado, Della Grace Volcano is a genderqueer artist, performer and activist whose photography is world-renowned. Del is also the co-producer of numerous books and other broadcasts and phenomena, including with J.J. Halberstam, the Drag King book, with Ulrika Dahl, Femmes of Power, and with Paul Preciado, Sex Works. Since the inception of the Critsex seminar, Del has been a frequent contributor and a supporter of our work and has kindly allowed us to feature Della Grace Volcano photography on the Critsex website. So it's a particular pleasure to welcome as our first speaker today, our artistic collaborator, Del. Thank you. I'll hand over to you, and hopefully you can all see Del's screen.
Yeah, is that good? Can you just nod? Maybe a few of you could unmute so I could hear sighs, laughter, you know, a bit more liveliness. That's what I like in this new Zoom world. Okay, so I did write a few things down, but this is going to be more like a conversation and more like saying what I've been doing in the last 20 years. I'm a Swedish citizen now. I've left the UK 15 years ago. My late mother got to meet my partner and said to her, thank you for giving my Dawson a chance at a normal life, which we thought was very funny, but actually Sweden has really made me straight, in a sense, straighten up. And well, we won't go into that too much, but it's a pleasure to be here now and seeing some of you on the screen anyway. And I want to just get stuck in because 20 minutes isn't much time. Well, now I have a little bit more time.
Longer.
So for all of you who are familiar with my work, which I think some of you are and some of you might not be, what you should know is that my work, my art, my activism, my life, it's impossible to separate them. And they're the primary source material for the work I've done. Not only are my bodies, my many different bodies that I've inhabited in my 63 odd years. I can also say, like Sandra Bernhardt, who some of you might remember, without you, I'm nothing. So it's a collaboration, what I do. I'm gonna see if this works to change slides. Okay, how do I change the slide then on this? Aha, here we go, button. So one of the strategies I have employed in both my art and activism is to make public interventions in the media and using the mainstream media as a vehicle for disseminating the information that I believe gets left out. And I guess I want to talk a little bit also about the intersections as well as the roadblocks that we share with other marginalized communities, particularly those who share the LGBTQ, sometimes I, umbrella. And after 20 years, I'm sure it's the same in the UK and other places, the I mostly is for invisible. And this exclusion actually has consequences in terms of our accesses to resources, as well as the access to the power to create policies and fund research that would improve the qualities of life with people with intersex characteristics around the world, regardless of whether they identify as intersex, DSD, or just people with a medical condition. Here you see a picture of me many years ago, 1995, I think that was 25 years ago. It's a self-portrait that's been used a lot. Most recently, Otar is a Swedish magazine that is RFSU, which is a kind of sex, gender, it's not RFSL, it's not the LGBTQI organization, it's another one that welcomes heterosexual people as well. And they recently had me on their cover, as well as an interview with me talking about the body politic. Krops politik means the body politic. We must, and what it says, hur hög måste intersexrörelsen skrika innan vi hörs, which means how loud must intersex people speak in order to be heard. So that's one of the recent, that was a few months ago. Another one here is I came to Sweden and had kids. That's what I was referring to about, like, I lived this kind of more normative life, 2 young children. I'm kind of out of time. I'm more grandparent age than parent age, but here was a local newspaper, Narcus Irlanda, who did an article about me being a MAPA, being an intersex and non-binary parent who was also breastfeeding. And that was in our local, I live in Middle Sweden, which has some connections with Middle Earth as well. I've been socially isolated for a long time, so now y'all are catching up with COVID. But it was a really good article. It says, in Maniska, a human is a human, not a sex. Here is another recent upcoming graphic that was made of me, which, funny, and I would never wear those shoes, but okay, it's a good article, and it talks what I'm going to be talking about here today, which is where intersex activism is, where we have come from, where we're going to, and how we've changed. So in Sweden, and this, I'll just tell you a couple more. This is also a Vice documentary. I'll go through a little bit of the media things I've done. The Vice documentary, the one with the pink braids, is Mika, Alexis Volcano, who is going to be 9 years old in a couple of days. Here Mika was 5.5, and it wasn't until the film that we asked Mika about their gender that they came out with being both. They had never, even though wisdom says children know what they are by the time they're 2 or 3, Mika had never expressed anything about their gender until they were asked when they were 5.5 for this film. Are you a boy or a girl? And I don't know if you can see it. Mika says, I answered that I was neither or both. Now Mika is very much a hen. Hen is a gender neutral pronoun, hon, han, hen in Swedish. And Mika is not super hardcore. We never corrected people when people assumed Mika was a boy or a girl. Their mother uses interchangeable han and hon, or he and she. I am hen, Mika is hen, and our youngest is also hen. So this is quite interesting to me, and this is one of the things in this documentary. I talk not only about being intersex, but I make it very clear what the difference is between a gender identity and an intersex physiology. Okay, are we good? And we've done everything from Der Spiegel. This was a Dutch magazine, no, Danish. The student who came and lived here for a month with us won the highest student prize for going to Mika's school and seeing how Mika interacted with the kids. One of the things that is important to me is that our kids don't think of themselves so much as lucky, but as privileged. And we are able to live in a city, in a country where being non-binary, being a hen, having an intersex parent who you can't really tell if they're male or female, and who their children call Mapa, is one of the public interventions I do every day. And we don't get bullied. I would say that we don't have a hard time being who we are. And one of the reasons I think it's important to do media and to get the word out there is because we can show what it could look like for every kid, because it's not so easy for every kid. Here, I think I forgot some of my introduction. I became aware of the intersex movement in the early 90s, and by the mid-90s, I understood that the term applied to me. And this was also through media. It was through the film Gender Knots, which was mostly about female masculinity. And it was about the people calling themselves gender cyborgs, gender queer. Non-binary wasn't a term then, but it was very much about that. But Hida Viloria was part of it. And when Hida told her story, I burst into tears because that was my story of becoming over feminine to mask the intersex characteristics that my body had developed at puberty and that I tried to hide. I did as much research on the subject as I could, and I was very fortunate to have access to people like Katrina Rohn, Ian Moreland, Lee May, Peter Hegarty, and later psychologists and researchers in Sweden, Tova Lundberg and Erika Alm. In the late 90s, I made a documentary called Journey Intersex about my cousin and I discovering our intersexness, for lack of a better term. And that was broadcast a couple times on Channel 4. Before I met Heidi, I got to spend a day with Suzanne Kessler and discuss the ethics of my revealing to my cousin Heidi, who had been born my cousin Travis, but had no idea that she was intersex. And when I did reveal the secret, I lost contact with my paternal family for 18 years. That was the cost. So I've continued to collaborate with cultural producers all this time. Here you see two on the left and the right are two Norwegian queer people who had sponsored us in the beginning to have meetings to try and make Intersex Scandinavia, which really did, it was an ally intersex group, but there were only 2 of us who were intersex at that time. And we tried for a couple of years to get it off the ground, but Swedish culture is extremely normative. And we didn't manage until a couple of years ago, we started Oi Sverige or Intersex Sverige. And we are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and one missing 6 people in Sweden who are part of our intersex group. Somebody make a noise.
Hello.
Thank you. That we've just managed to get funding from Australia. We've actually got funding twice that enabled us to make this website, which we're very happy about. And we're really busy trying to encourage people to be members. But it's very much, as you might have read, Sweden is not following the rest of the world in terms of wearing masks. They have a lot of trust in their government, too much, I would say. But what that means is they would rather have doctors fix them. They would rather just see their intersex variation as something that is an anomaly, something that is very rare, and that they are probably the only ones or very few others. So I've been trying for 15 years to get something going on in Sweden. And it has only just in the last couple of years have I had Ellie Norfelt. Ellie and I have been trying for 10 years, but now we have a few more people, and that feels very, very good. Sharona here was the first person who go back, Sharona, where are you? Sharona has a different name now that I'm not going to say, but because Sharona lives in America and doesn't feel it's safe to be out as intersex as they were when we first met. But when we met, we kind of crashed intersex conference that, well, I didn't crash it. Milton Diamond invited me, but Sharona hitchhiked up from Spain to come to this conference and arrived just in time to crash it with me. And we were both speaking back. Laurie Slade, I think you know Laurie, Ian, because you were there when there was a reading at the drill hall of The Specimen, which Laurie shared with me was inspired by my speaking back to surgeons like Philip Ramsey at this conference at the Tavistock Clinic. So I had wanted to make Visibly Intersex, which was a portrait project, to give us, to give the subjects, to have speaking subjects about being intersex. I wanted to start that in 2000, and it wasn't until 2011 that I found intersex people who were willing to be heard and seen. This is the picture I liked the best from Visibly Intersex. This was a conference. All of the pictures, or most of the pictures I've made for Visibly Intersex, are taken in the breaks at conferences. This was a conference in Athens. Okay, moving on. Mauro Cabral is an intersex and trans activist living in Argentina. And so far has been the only one who has given me text. Can you see the whole text, or is this little thing getting in the way? I don't know. I can see this thing.
We can see it all on the left side of the screen, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to put it away, but okay. So I'm just going to go. This was the first intersex forum in 2011 where I started making the pictures. It was sponsored by ILGA, International Lesbian and Gay Association. And you're going to see there's Mauro, there's a lot of people that were there. Manny, a lot of people there. It was the first time. Stockholm the next year. And this was OI International. We were a different group that was started by Curtis Hinkle in the USA. This is us in Latvia, in Riga. And Inns Krominga is also an artist that I've exhibited with in many big group LGBTQI shows. And I'm just going to go through these because it'll take too much time. But a lot of these people, I mean, I could talk for a long time about Julius Kagwa in Uganda, and Chris and Nabha Singh, and Hiker goes around free hugs with intersex in Asia, Manny in New Zealand. Deborah has died now, as have a couple other people, one other person. Gina is retired in Australia. Not easy being intersex in Bulgaria. Sally Gross died in South Africa, and part of the reason she died is because she didn't have adequate medical care because of her intersex variation. Dan is what we call our CEO, very good with admin. Kitty is amazing, has really made great strides in Iceland, and I think is probably still the chairperson of OII. Miriam in the Netherlands. Leslie. This is Ellie Norfeld, who I started the group with in Sweden. Okay. And I mean, it's interesting because I think that there are, I think it's great to be able to see people and see what we look like, that we look like everybody else. We look cis, we look trans, we look punk, we look handsome. You know, it's like, it's very, I think we need to go, it's representation is something, a strategy I've employed for 40 years. And I think it's important to be visible, but I think that there are lots of other ways in which we have to make interventions because we've been visible now for almost 30 years. This is a project Estrella funded with Inns and I that has stalled a bit right now due to a lot of reasons, but we are looking to make an archive of activists that is rhizomic, that doesn't have a linear narrative that's the beginning, middle, and end, but more like portals or wormholes to go down. Thea Hillman, Hida Valaria, they've both written books. David Strachan has been really beating the drum for a long, long time in San Francisco. Hans is now, I think, the head of Interact in the USA, which is a more youth-based intersex organization that I don't know how they do it. We need to take lessons from them in Intersex Sweden. But maybe it's nice for people to see some of the names or people that you've read about. This was us in New Orleans. I guess that was almost 3 years ago. And finally, my art project. I have no idea how long I've been talking. This is more to do with the aging intersex body and looking very much about like how to frame myself, how to make my body legible to others. So just a few pictures from that. Eliza Steinbach has written about this part of the series, and I think I'm also referencing early medical photography. Nadar was a French photographer who made the first intersex portrait of somebody who I don't think is Herculin Barben, but other people have suggested it might have been. It was around the same time. And yeah, so here I am, the naked, aging interbody in the Swedish landscape. And I say, what in my spoken word piece, I say, consider intersex bodies, consider my body, a body that has put itself on the line to be judged by you, a body that basically is constantly in a state of change, but repudiates shame that we're supposed to have for having these non-normative bodies. And of course, my hope is that if people see that you don't have to be afraid, that you can live a life being non-binary, being out, and not conforming to the binary norm, perhaps this will have an effect where people might not be so afraid if their child is born with a body that they don't recognize immediately as being only male or only female. Is that it? Yeah, so I say to, and I believe in crossing the line, not just once, but as many times as it takes for us all to cross over together. There. Tells me I have almost 40 minutes then. Now
Wonderful.
What, Lisa? Should I unshare my screen or what do we do?
Sure, unshare your screen, and then I think people can see a bigger picture of your little face, which is nice.
My little face. Stop sharing. Okay, there we go.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. So as you know, at critical sexology seminars, what we tend to do is take very specific questions about the talk, any issues that are raised by the talk now, and larger issues that people want to discuss more broadly will be discussed at the end as part of the response. So if anyone has questions for Del, please insert your question into the Q&A box. Or I think, although I thought I disabled this in an authoritarian move to silence people, I think if you actually raise your hand, I'm going to be able to let you speak. So if you prefer to do that, do that.
And can the panelists also just speak up? The panelists,
yeah, the panelists can all just speak if they wish to by unmuting themselves and speaking. If attendees wish to speak, if they raise their hand, I can allow them to talk, or please do write in the Q&A box if you'd prefer to.
While we're waiting for people to do that, Della, I wondered if you could say some more around that question of LGBTQIA, anything else, because I think that it's interesting how intersex is placed in the context of wider sexual subcultures and activism, particularly given that I suppose one of the things we've often wanted to say as people challenging medical practice is that having an intersex anatomy doesn't necessarily mean you have a particular sexuality. And in fact, some people would say it's nothing to do with it. So I wondered what you thought around how the I sits in the acronym.
I think it's hard for people to get their head around because they see often people see LGBT as being a choice and intersex as not being a choice. And I think that is one of the, what would you call it? One of the stresses, or, you know, there have been a lot of, you know, in trans groups, oftentimes people who are intersex hide their intersexness in order to be accepted into a larger community of trans people. So I think that's one problem. I think that, you know, of seeming like, oh, intersex is not something you choose, but something that you are, where, I mean, and this has come up for me in a new project I'm doing now, which, you know, I'm not going to talk about so much, but the born this way, the idea of being born this way, and that being more valid than making a choice. I made a choice to let my intersexiness or my non-binariness be visible. I also have a choice to make it non-visible and be Del the dude. And it's right. I think one of the things that's changed within intersex activism as well, that I'll just mention here, is that being intersex is a very strong component of my identity, but it is not my identity. I'm also someone who just identifies as queer and non-binary, and AMAPA, and those are parts of my identity. Intersex, Morgan in Australia, kind of, we had to argue about it, but I came around to his way of thinking that it's better for activists to talk about it as something that is a physiological characteristic than an identity, because too many people who have intersex characteristics have a fear of the queer, and they don't want to be labeled into the LGBT, which is sad, of course, but you have to meet people where they are rather than where you think they should be, I think. Does that kind of, I think that touches on it. There's a lot more to say, but.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there's an attendee with their hand up, and I'll go to the attendee before I go to Dan. Because we're recording this, I want to give you the possibility to be anonymous. So if I allow you to talk, please introduce yourself if you wish to, or ask your question anonymously. So I'm going to allow the person asking to talk. But I think.
Oh, is that Surya?
Yes, okay.
Oh, sorry, I just
de-anonymized. Okay, Sarai, you've been outed. Can you talk?
Yes.
Hi.
So hello.
Hello.
I'm actually Saifa. I'm standing in for Surya, who couldn't make it today. And I wanted to just extend toward Della Grace. Thank you for just really sharing that history, because I think that history often gets lost, that intersex history, that intersex activism, sort of like the people whose shoulders we stand on. I think sometimes that history gets lost. And thank you for communicating and sharing that so visually powerful, you know, because I know that I've seen that photograph of Morrow in many places, and I didn't know that was your work. So, you know, thank you for capturing the very real, the very raw moments in our history. Yeah, and thank you, you know, to Della Grace, thank you to Ian, thank you to all the intersex people on this panel, and the people who've just been doing this work for so long.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's like, I'm sure my work was credited in it, but who looks and says, who took that picture, you know? And it's, yeah, it's great. I love that photo of Morrow. I have many others, more recent even, but it's important that we have, I mean, there are hundreds and if not thousands of people who are out in one way or another as intersex. And we're trying to find them in Sweden, Norway, Denmark.
Thank you. Shall we take Dan's question, and then there's another question in the audience. So Dan.
Thank you very much, Della Grace. I really enjoyed your talk, and particularly some of your photography. It's amazing. There are three things that I think you said that from the medical profession, I think are really important perspectives. One important word that you used was collaboration. And I think that that's phenomenally important in terms of how we look forward rather than back, in terms of how we become involved in looking after people that present to us and helping them with the medical aspects of problems that they put to us. The second important thing that I think you highlighted beautifully was the fact that doctors can't fix problems in perhaps the way that historically that was purveyed. And as a profession, we need to be very careful how we interact in that way and how we think about treatments from that perspective. And the third, and the thing that I think really struck me beautifully, was the very eloquent way that you said that people need to be less afraid of being defined. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but less afraid of being defined or of not being defined by gender. Forgive me if I got that slightly wrong, but I think you understand what I mean. That from our point of view, that's a really important thing, because it means that that collaboration becomes more genuine. It means that we are able, as a surgical profession, to make sure that we're not confined by surgery, that we look for the broadest possible range of treatment pathways and not necessarily seek to define people by what we can achieve anatomically. I hope I've put that in a way that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think those are important points. I think it reminded me that one of the things I wanted to say is we need more research, and we need better statistics, and we need to be able to follow up people now and looking back as well. Yeah. You don't really need a response, right, Dan? You just, yeah.
No, I want it from a medical point of view. I really wanted to highlight those as important aspects that I'd picked up upon.
Yeah, thank you. That's good feedback. I think there was somebody saying.
Thank you. Yeah, we have one more person who wants to ask a question. So Laura, I'm going to allow you to talk. Can you unmute?
I think you may need to.
Oh, there you go.
You may need to unmute, Laura.
I have been doing.
Okay. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Laura, are you there?
Hi, Laura. You're not muted anymore. So can you speak to us?
While we're waiting for Laura, I wanted to say, do you all know who Mika Vinhola is?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, good.
Just about, yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I must say I'm kind of excited to see you all, even hearing Saifa and many other people I may know from, for, I don't know, since many years, even if it's just through a screen. So nice, really nice to meet you. And now I've written something, since my English is not quite good, and I will try to read it. Dear Dell, I love the way you have just show faces while talking about our intersex visibility, making our voices heard at the same time. So I just want to add my name to the list as an intersex artist and activist in Spain, where we are lastly experiencing how the Spanish intersex subject is also emerging of the closet. So here I am, my name is Laura Villacremer. And now as a reflection, as you said, intersex is not a choice, that's right, but at the same time, I do believe other LGBT++ letters do not choose so many things, since all of us try to survive in this system. And on the other hand, I just want to say that I do feel my I part of my identity. So I am an intersex woman, since I always say the same. I always say the same, but what was being questioned, I don't know if that's the right word, questioned when I was told I am intersex, is that I was not a real woman. So of course, intersex is also and must be part of my identity. That's all. Thank you very much.
Well, great, Laura. I'd love to hear more about, you can contact me at delagracevolcano@mac.com. Anybody out there, my full name, no spaces, mac.com. I would love to someday come to Spain again and work with people there to add you to Visibly Intersex. Everybody, it is a collaboration, as Dan stressed, is very important. Everyone who's part of the project has access to the project to use it for educational purposes, to show what a wide variety and how international we are. And I didn't mean, I hope you didn't misunderstand. I'm not saying that I think intersex is more real or we were born this way and other people. I don't know. I mean, I have a huge problem with the idea of born this way. And I think that that is a tension that people have in the intersex movement, intersecting with other groups, particularly trans groups.
Yes, I completely agree. I completely agree with you. I just wanted to tell you
always being assumed. I mean, always being assumed that one is, I kind of have to almost reject being trans in order to make people see me as intersex.
Yeah.
You know, what am I? Am I trans masculine or trans feminine? I only recently found out I have Y chromosomes as well. I didn't know that. You know, so what does that, you know, what can I be a lesbian or a gay man? Not really. You know, but it's an interesting subject, I think.
Yes.
How our identities intersect with our the sexed body.
Yes. Yes, I normally think about non-binary categories, also talking about gender, sex, identity, expression. So it's not only about non-binary sex characteristics. It's I mean the categories are also connected, right? So
yeah.
Yes. I will write to you. For sure, Del. I couldn't write your address, but I think you can write it down in the panel, and I will do it for sure.
I think you can respond to Laura in the chat.
Write it on the chat. Yeah, good.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for organizing this exciting event. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So we said we would pause about 10 minutes before the hour so everyone can take a little comfort break. So can I just thank Dale again for such an exciting talk that I think really touched us all and made us all feel very aware of time passing and how not only bodies, but also perhaps our attitudes towards identities, towards all kinds of social phenomena have changed since we began these conversations. So I'm sure we'll come back at the end of today's event to picking up on some of the really timely issues that you've raised. So thank you, Dale. I think what I'll just ask everybody to do is, if you wish to hide yourself, turn off your videos and mute yourself, and then we'll come back at, shall we say, 3 on the dot. It gives you 8 minutes. Is that enough? Okay, and thank you. And I'll make the people who need to speak co-hosts so that they can speak in the next session. Thank you.